is a traditional axe from Japan woodworker. Been kind of interested to use a traditional Japanese axe for quite a while now. On top is my wildlife hatchet from Bruks. Very nice traditional small axe or hatchet. A couple of things which are immediately obviously different between the Japanese version and the Swedish version. The Japanese version has a heavier head and a longer handle, so it's going to be more powerful on the swing, significantly. Interestingly enough, it has a higher edge angle, and the edge is significantly thicker. I didn't expect that. That might be because this is the camping hatchet, rather than the traditional woodworking ones. It also has a very deep hollow grind right here. The Bruks has a similar hollow relief, but it's not nearly as deep. So, first of all, I'm expecting the Japanese version to have more power on the swing. I'm expecting it to be a more capable splitter because of the hollow grind and heavier edge. And the chopping ability should be roughly comparable. Now, in terms of carving, there's a couple of things which stands out. The Japanese bit is longer, or essentially wider in terms of it's further in front of the handle. That increases fatigue when you're cutting, and again the edge angle is significantly heavier. So in terms of just carving fine cutting ability, the edge should go to the Bruks hatchet by a significant margin. In terms of general use for people, especially people very familiar with axes, there's a couple of drawbacks to the Japanese version. The most significant one is this. If you notice, the Bruks axe is very neutrally balanced. That's because the pole and the bit right here have roughly the same weight. On the Japanese version, they're not. You can see how easily it tilts down. That's because it has a very shallow pole and a very large face, so the blade will torque very straightforward. If you hold a blade in your hand like this, you can feel it wanting to torque down. With the Bruks, it doesn't. You hold it like this, it rotates that way, of course, because the head is heavy, but it doesn't want to spin. But when you're holding the Japanese axe, it is wanting to rotate in your hand, and you have to hold it against that torque. There's a couple of other issues. Most of them are relatively minor. There's machining marks left on the handle right here. The handle has dips and hollows in it. They all need to be sanded out. The bit on the axe, if you look down the handle of the axe, the edge of the bit should split the handle right in the middle. That gives you maximum precision when you're cutting. That doesn't happen on the Japanese axe. Not only is the bit off to the side, the entire bit of the head is actually twisted. Now I'm talking about a few degrees here. But again, you can pick that up with use if your skill is high enough. That's some of the main points. There's a couple of little nitpicky things. This lacquer is very uneven. It's scaled off in a bunch of reasons, in a bunch of areas. There's some varnish or epoxy or something on the edge in a couple of places. That all needs to be cleaned off. The actual edge itself is exceedingly dull. Like, I mean dull, as in it's not actually sharp at all. When I checked the edge under high magnification, I found out that it was just shaped. It wasn't actually sharpened. There's very large rough spots on the edge from whatever belt or sander that they used to shape this, and it was never essentially refined after that. That's not a big deal, but again, it would be nice to get essentially a cutting tool and be able to cut with it right away, straight out of the box. So I don't think this is going to replace my Bruks hatchet by any means, because they're two very different tools. What I'm thinking on is I'm hoping this is going to be more of my sort of winter small axe, because it has a heavier edge profile, and it should be more suitable for splitting, again because of the heavier edge profile, longer handle, heavier head and deeper hollow grind, so it has more power, a heavier edge to initiate that violent split, and a deep primary grind not to allow it to bind onto wood as it's passing through it. And again, for winter, when it's colder, when the wood is harder because it's frozen, this heavier edge should stand up the knots and stuff a bit better. And I think overall it should be able to stand with the Bruks axe in terms of raw chopping ability, because it is a bit heavier, the handle is a bit longer, which will compensate for the heavy edge. I think the only real drawback is that it's not going to be nearly as capable carving and cutting, because the Bruks axe does that really well. You choke up on a Bruks axe like this, you have a really fine cutting tool. That's not going to be as capable on this. Again, you're fighting that counter torque in your hand, the edge is further in front of your grip, and it's a bit heavier. Now of course I could modify a lot of this. I mean, I could bring the edge back and make this neutrally balanced. I could thin the edge out right here. You could do all kinds of things, but essentially this is a different tool. So instead of turning it into a clone of the wildlife axe, I find out where it does well, where it doesn't do so well, and hopefully I got a place for that in the normal kit that I carry around. So I'm a bit disappointed in a few things, but I'm very positive about a couple of other things, and really looking forward getting this axe out and putting some use on it. So the first things I need to do before I take it out, give the handle a nice sanding, put a couple coats of linseed oil on it, clean most of this stuff up off the bit, give the bit a nice sharpening, and it should be ready to go. And as a final thought, it comes with this little vinyl case. It's not much of a sheath, there's no loop on it. The snaps are actually in the way. When you go to put the axe in, the edge will crack off these unless you're careful about it. I mean, it's essentially something that you'd put the axe away when you're inside, but I mean, it's nothing close to a case as such.